What's up, everybody? Welcome to Tesla Fix. Today we have another special episode, as I always introduce. Today we want to talk a little bit about the recently discovered things we've heard around Tesla again. I mean, for example, the stock price is skyrocketing right now. I've covered that in two of my last videos pretty thoroughly, and also had a discussion with Tesla Boomer Mama before it's skyrocketed, where we discussed why it will be skyrocketing. So our prediction was pretty close. That's pretty nice. But today I've invited somebody very special to talk about the pot that's still going around in the media. And it's pretty interesting because Tesla is performing pretty good right now. We can also see that in the stock market. And for this, I have here to introduce to you John from Tesla Owners Silicon Valley. I'm pretty glad you're here.
Hey, Jan, thanks for having me on the channel again.
Yeah, I'm pretty stoked for this episode. We hadn't spoken so long. It was like a few months now, I think. Yeah, and I think you also do a great job on your show and everything. And yeah, you covered Tesla pretty thoroughly. That's why I think you're the right person to talk about Tesla's culture, Tesla, the FUD around Tesla, because I think, yeah, you can really see it on Twitter. Your content is really based around everything almost, but also the culture topic is very important for you, which is very interesting. I think that's why I'm stoked you be here. Yeah.
Yeah, so I run the largest club in North America. So a lot of the times, we have a very big pulse on, what's going on within the community, how how people are perceiving things, how owners are feeling. And so, I'm always very excited to share my wisdom and any knowledge that I have. So I appreciate you having me on the channel. And yeah, we on our podcast, the Tesla Beat podcast, we try to do a weekly roundup of all the news. I personally don't have time to cover it every day, but we love to just do a quick roundup of everything that's going on. So thanks again for having me on the show. A huge fan of what you're doing and glad to be back.
Yeah, and I have to really recommend also the Tesla Beat podcast here, because I always watch it also to get a summary of the week. Sometimes you can't cover everything, you can't follow everything. That's why I enjoy listening, and I also like that Jeff is a regular. Sometimes he's there, and also Amy, and I've interviewed them recently as well. Because of the Tesla Beat podcast, that's why I've invited them. So yeah, I had great discussions with Jeff. He's such a great guy with all the production stuff topics. He's really deep into this, the whole supply chain and everything. And Amy is also very pretty deep in some nerdy topics that I really enjoyed. So thanks again for setting up like the contact a little bit. But yeah, we have pretty interesting topics today. I think we could start with that Elon Musk is going around and traveling around the world right now to get deals done, because I think for expanding to 20 million cars a year in 2030, the goal that Elon set for himself for Tesla. Yeah, so he was in Italy, for example. I have a small clip here. And that's the Prime Minister of Italy here, and he was there. And yeah, what are your views on this? That he's traveling? Why is he traveling all around the globe, talking to leaders? What do you think? What's your take on this?
Yeah, it's been a wild ride over the past 5 years, and I think when you think of stepping back from even the fact that he's just kind of traveling all across the world right now, really Tesla has been one of the most overlooked companies in the US specifically. And so fast forward 5 years from now, everyone wants a piece of Tesla. It doesn't matter what country you're a part of right now, everyone wants a piece of it. And so what you're seeing happening now is obviously he's going to Italy. He's been to France. He had a call with Mongolia. He also met with
France,
exactly. He met with the president of France last week as well. Yesterday he met with the not to get into everything that but we don't have to get at, but he met with the Prime Minister of India, Modi. But what you see happening is everyone wants a piece of Tesla at this point. They all know where this company is going. if you're a prime minister or president of these other countries, now having companies like Ford and GM adopting their standard, trying to get a piece of the action as far as the charging
Mhm.
network, it's more of like the mic has been dropped and people realize, okay, this company's not going anywhere. And actually, the difference is now, instead of going against the curve, we have to adopt what they've created. We need a piece of that
Yeah.
action, because they knew back in 2012. That's why Elon started the charging network. He made that announcement in 2012 because he knew the greatest issue with adoption of EVs was going to be setting up a robust charging network. And
Yeah.
so, because he was so forward thinking 11 years ago, literally, everyone now sees what they've done. They've created a simplistic model. You just plug in the car, that's it. It's really simple. I don't have to open up the app and do a bunch of things. It's just, plug and play. And
Yeah.
because of that, it's, fast forward 11 years, the Model Y is the best selling car in the world. And people realize, like, Tesla's not going anywhere. And I think, as much as people had hoped that this company would kind of disappear, they
Mhm.
are now the standard. They are now the benchmark. They're now the company that is everyone is going to be compared against, and is still
Mhm.
compared against. I mean, how many headlines do you still see? Oh, the Tesla killer is coming. And,
Still waiting.
yeah, exactly. Here we are. I've been in the community now, lapping about 5 years since I got my first Tesla in July of 2018. And I'm still waiting. Like, and I don't think it's going to come. I mean, I think there's going to be great cars out there, which there are now. Like, the Lucid has an amazing range. Like, the
Mhm.
Rivian, the R1T, the R1S are great cars. But ultimately, there's no one ultimately going to be scaling like Tesla is, based on where they're headed. And that's partially
Yeah.
why he has all of these meetings. And I'm going to still align potentially from Jeff, even, you know, the way that he's setting up all of these meetings, it's with a specific purpose. It's not like he just
Mhm.
woke up one morning and he's like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm going to talk with Mongolia. I'm going to talk to Indonesia. I'm going to talk to France and Italy. But they're all happening, post these big announcements with Ford and GM. And then even Rivian came out earlier this week saying that they're going to adopt the NACS
Yeah.
standard and get access to the charging network. And obviously, then you have random companies like Hyundai saying, oh, we're thinking about it. But this is after three of the biggest companies, right? GM, Ford, and then obviously Rivian is ramping. Then you also have pretty much every electric charging company like Blink,
Yes.
EVgo, ChargePoint, all of them. They're essentially going to adopt this standard. They don't have a
Yeah.
choice, at least in North America.
Mhm.
Um, so people don't realize, for every job that Tesla creates in a region, that creates probably 5 to 10 more jobs because of
Mhm.
suppliers, because of partners. And so, people are realizing that Tesla's the real deal. They're not going anywhere. And more importantly, they want a piece of the action.
Yeah.
They know that this company can make a huge difference on their economy. And India has been one of those Pandora's boxes that's just been really hard to get into. And, a lot of companies, have to overlook it because of the insane tariffs and taxes that they have to take because of, trying to do business. So there's like very specific regulations of how to do it right. And so, as we know Tesla has been mulling over India for a while. It's been one of those things that they've talked a lot about. I've heard it in the past, even again, the small 5 years that I've been in the community. I've heard India, they keep bringing it up.
Mhm.
And I know, based on even stuff that Amy has said in the past, that there's certain things, that partnerships that they have to set up with Korea in order to get
Mhm.
access into India. So there's just a lot of things that, they're continuing to just make those chess moves. That,
Mhm.
they're not jumping at every single person that comes at them. They're looking at, okay, how do we want to ramp? How do we get to 20 million vehicles? How do we get to 10, 15, 5, just all of those dominoes ahead of them. They know that the uphill battle is huge, that they have to execute extremely well. And we know that there's going to be headwinds. Who knows? We don't have a crystal ball of what is in the future. But, I think it's awesome to see this kind of courtship that these countries are having with Elon and trying to pull him in, because for the longest time he's just been the person that you can just crap on and just put out some fake news or FUD or fake allegations against stuff that he's done. I mean, it's
Mhm.
insane what we've even seen this year,
Yeah.
and so it's I think that's what you're seeing right now is that the world, so the US is finally, they don't have a choice. Their
Mhm.
hand is tied behind their back. They have to get on the Tesla bandwagon, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
But then, with that, because they're finally jumping on board, you're also just seeing the world, wanting to jump onto the Tesla bandwagon as well and get a piece of that action as well. So I think
Mhm.
that's kind of they both go hand in hand, but really, I think it's awesome to see, as Elon travels to these different countries, and obviously I know even the India Prime Minister came to New York, they met there. But
Mhm.
as he's going and doing all of these meetings, it's really just awesome to see people stepping up to the plate and really giving the accolades and the, what's the word, they're finally giving Tesla what they that we all know that they've been, right? The
Yeah.
accolades or the
Yeah.
awards, whatever. And now
Mhm.
it's, again, it's more of like, hey, we love what you're doing. How can we all be a part of it? That's really what it's coming down to now.
Yeah, makes absolutely sense. I mean, it's also pretty interesting to see this shift. I mean, I think the adoption of the charging standard really marks like a point where the wind totally changed, and because they adopting the charging standard means that they what they actually say is that, oh, this is superior, this Tesla technology is superior to the rest, and now they're acknowledging it. I mean, we know this as Tesla bulls and Tesla enthusiasts and fans, and everything, but if you really look into it, what the company does, it's pretty amazing. And like you said, I also agree that many countries now see this and see, okay, this shift is inevitable. I mean, you've seen the statistic as well. The adoption of EVs is getting exponentially higher now. I mean, in the US, it doubled almost since last year, and or the year before. I'm not sure, but you could really see like it's also, even if the US is still in comparison a slower mover like Europe or anything, but still you can really see that. And also the Jim Farley interview was pretty yeah, eye-opening, because they
Yeah,
really acknowledged it for the first time that I have a small clip here. We can just throw that in for 1 second.
let's do it.
The about the real competition. I've also shown this with or talked about this with Farzad as well, but I think it's very interesting and important. I think
Our main competition in the pure electric space is going to be BYD and Geely and Tesla. I mean, that's our
Right.
competition. It's not General
Yeah.
Motors. It's not going to be
Yeah.
BMW or Volkswagen.
so. Yeah, that small bit I think is very a game changer actually, because he's naming legacy car companies, and yeah, you can really see that, okay, in that space, that's not the competition. We have to really shift. And I mean, 20 million cars a year is a huge number, and they try to get the 50% year over year growth, still maintain this. And for this, they really need every partner they can get, at least have them in the backhand or something, that they just can say, okay, France has a good offer, Spain has a good offer, for example, or Italy has a good offer, and have all these offers on the table, and then decide what's strategically important. And Tom Zhu, I think, will have a lot to do in his position for building
Exactly.
these companies, but these factories. Yeah, you want to
Yeah,
add something here?
you showed one of my favorite clips, or interviews in the past several, probably in the
Yeah,
past month, the Jim Farley
yeah.
fully charged one. I don't know what he was doing getting on that show and sharing these tidbits, but man, he laid a bunch of golden eggs for Tesla fans, because he
Yeah.
explained how far ahead Tesla is and how screwed legacy auto is.
Hmm.
And specifically what I'm referring to is not even the clip that you shared. It was the
Mhm.
clip where it talks literally about how Ford and Legacy Auto really has outsource pretty much every single part that they make. And what happens is that these parts or segments of the build of the car actually go to like an auction, and then whoever wins the bid
Mhm.
wins, hey, I get to make the axle or whatever piece.
Mhm.
But the problem is that all of these companies are not only making the parts separately from Ford, they're also writing their own software to make the part work, to communicate
Mhm.
back to the system in different languages. So then imagine, what did Jim say? He's like, we have to go from being essentially a hardware company or
Mhm.
like a car company to a software company. But imagine you've literally outsourced every part that
Yeah.
is stuck behind the Ford brand. How do you even bring that in? It's like
Yeah.
having a ball and chain that you literally can't get rid of.
Mhm.
You literally can't get rid of it. You are
Yeah.
shackled to the ground.
Yeah.
So not only do they have the dealership model, which is,
Yeah.
hurting them horribly, because the dealerships are the ones making the money, not Ford, right?
Mhm.
And then secondly, you literally have a business model from the dealerships now to how the car is built that have made it even like, so you're fighting two huge uphill battles.
Mm.
But that snippet of information was huge for me. Like, I don't think
Yeah.
anything ever clicked. Like, I knew Legacy Auto was screwed, but it wasn't until a
Yeah.
CEO of a big company, in the legacy auto space really spelled it out and just really said,
Yeah.
this is the nightmare that we are living with and breathing with every day. Right.
Yeah.
And I looked it up. I believe Ford came to the Bay Area. They set up like a research and development center within the past like 5 to 8 years. Because Silicon Valley, and when I say here, Silicon Valley is really the hub for engineering, right? As
Yeah.
much as these companies have left the Bay Area during COVID, all of them have kept their engineering presence here. I mean, Tesla announced their headquarters of engineering is clearly still the Silicon Valley, is because you can't go to Austin, you can't go to other parts of the world necessarily and replace the engineering talent that you get here. And they have, obviously can't come here 5 to 8 years ago, but that's just in the past decade, right? That they're starting to
Mhm.
realize, like, okay, we need to build, a software platform really for our vehicles. But again, we could talk all day about how screwed Legacy Auto is, but it wasn't until that clip where it just became crystal
Yeah.
clear on the nightmare that they face, that Jim
Yeah.
Farley wakes up every day realizing, hey, we can't be this, car manufacturer anymore. We have to be a software first company and potentially pull in all of the stuff we've outsourced, if that's even possible, depending on these insane
Mhm.
contracts that they have. Um, but
That's
yeah, it
true.
was. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's absolutely. This is this really was a huge turning point. Um, I have the clip also here. I'm gonna show it for 1 second with the
Do it.
software. I think because it's very
Car
interesting.
companies haven't written software like this
Yeah.
ever. They've
Yes.
never written software. So we're literally writing how the vehicle operates, the software to operate the vehicle for the first time ever.
Yeah. This was just a small snippet of this, but you're
Exactly.
absolutely correct. I mean, Herbert Diess, for example, at VW also was very vocal about saying, "Hey, we're going to lay off workers in 2030 when we don't step up our game." And he said this publicly to all those managers as well. And yeah, you don't do that in Germany, so he was sawed off, and he was canned. And this is so stupid because I think this also gives Jim Farley a lot of legitimacy as well, from the perspective of, okay, they at least show their failures, they show their mistakes, and are more honest about it. And this makes
Exactly.
there's this totally different thing. I know that they have to please their shareholders, they have to please their dealership network right now still, and it's hard for them to shift. And now we had this law passing that I don't know. I think it was in Florida. I think it was passed that
Yes.
just the new car companies can sell direct to consumer, but legacy car companies can't. So if they already have a dealership in place, by law they can't sell direct to consumer, which is which is pretty awful, and also another nail in the coffin, I think, for legacy auto. Yeah, because the liability of the dealership network is on its own. It's such a, I mean, for example, the inventory. Ford has always low inventory, but the inventory sits at the dealers. That's why it's not in the
Yeah.
books of Ford. So it's almost like tuned. Jeff talked about this last week.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I actually
pretty interesting.
funny thing that you mentioned it, not that I'm a car dealer expert, but I actually met, I won't give the name of the company, but
Okay.
I met with a friend over the holiday weekend, was at a birthday party, and he runs a dealer locally, and he was essentially saying that they're in a situation right now, right during COVID. I remember driving by, no cars, absolutely all gone. I mean, during the peak of it. Now he said that, cars are going even well below MSRP, which is the suggested retail price, because what happens is that he's paying hundreds of dollars every day while that car sits on the lot, because he's paying like something like 6% interest. So at this point, it's like, as much as they would love to find the right buyer, upsell them, they just need to move the cars, because
Yeah.
they're losing a certain amount per vehicle per day
Yeah.
while it sits there. And so, again, it's one of those things where Ford isn't dealing with that issue. Ford is more of like, they're probably calling up the dealer and saying, "Hey, do you want more? Do you want more?" Or Ford is potentially even pressuring the dealer to take more. But the problem is that some of these legacy auto dealers can't move the cars right now. No one's
Yeah.
buying, right? But again, it's just the business model is so backwards that I don't really know what is going to give for these car companies. I think Tesla did an amazing job in the past couple weeks with these huge announcements and getting kudos. I mean, obviously, that's partially what's been helping the stock just steamroll for a long time. I mean, it's crazy. It's up to what, 270 right now, and even hit like something, it was even higher than that. Obviously, it's a little soft today, given the whole market's down in general. But it's been skyrocketing because of all these companies adopting their standard. It's just validation that this company is for real. But legacy auto has so much that they have to deal with, so much baggage, because it's still more profitable for them to make gas cars than it is for EVs. And I think it was even Ford and GM that said that they won't be profitable on EVs until 2030, which is, that's another 7 years from now.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's just the battle is, it's like David and Goliath at this point. Really, legacy auto is really, they're going to have to beat Goliath somehow in order to get through this.
Yeah. And also, if you look at all the numbers, I mean, there are numbers floating in my head. Every company almost says, yeah, for example, Toyota with their second breakthrough in solid state batteries, they announced also 2026 or something, or 2027, around this ballpark. They try to implement it, but then they don't. I mean, if they have the finally the models on the roads, it's 2030 also. And nearly every other manufacturer tries to target 2030, but the thing is, Tesla already has mass production in place. They are in the best, like, besides BYD, and BYD is right behind them, but in mass production, nobody can compete. And it's interesting to see that a giant like VW, a giant like Toyota, really shows that they're more or less defeated right now, actually, since like 5 years already or something.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
because the reality is that, Tesla is in a situation right now where they have so many ideas that too many ideas is actually the problem. And they need to prioritize ruthlessly, and they will, and they are going to, right? We know that they're going to. This is like one of the coolest companies, the best product roadmaps of the future. No other company can even really come close to it when you think of it across any industry, right? Tesla is the
That's
leader
true.
of innovation across any industry, technology, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where Tesla has been iterating on the supercharger since 2012, since the launch. And
Yes.
they are obviously, we know, even in Europe, you've been blessed to receive V4 out there. They're already installing it. I don't even think it's in the US yet. They're already on the version 4 right now. And, they're already planning probably on the back end 5 and 6. And by the time, Toyota finally brings out a car, Tesla will have really reinvented not only the battery, the full way that the car is built. They'll have the Gen 3 platform by then, most likely. And, potentially even a compact car. Potentially, I believe they're releasing 2 new products potentially sometime this year, which could be the compact car plus the van. And yeah, it's just one of those things, at least what they said, because I was at the shareholder meeting. They said that the 2 new products will allow them to get to a volume of 5 million alone from those 2 new products. So it's just one of those things where, they are the experts. It's kind of like going into the encyclopedia. They are the people you go to learn about EVs, how to make a car. And, because they've standardized it. I mean, the fact that they have, these iron castings that can essentially delete 400 or 500 parts just to make one part of the car, or the main part of the car. It's just, it's insane to think that this company was new to the block, and yet they came in and reinvented almost how a car should be in general, right? Because we had the Prius and a bunch of these hybrids. So they took the electric car and said, this is what it should be. And then they went and they were like, not only this is how it should be, but this is how it should be built. And then it was like, let's triple down and say, this is what you're going to need for the future to make this successful, which was the charging network and all these forward looking things. And so it blows my mind that some of these companies are still trying to catch up and really, again, give these forward looking statements, potentially just to get a couple of public relations news and, getting their name out there a little bit more while Tesla continues just hit the headlines. I mean, have you heard anything really about any other company in the past 3 weeks? I mean, obviously we both probably consume a lot of Tesla, but it's more of like Hyundai. Oh, they're considering the NACS, which is what Tesla made. It's, some stuff about Toyota, but it's Toyota's like 2027
reacting to Tesla, actually.
Exactly. So
they're just reactive, and that's pretty also a bad position to be just in reaction mode all the time, in panic mode and reaction mode. And I think what I think so interesting, or the biggest point, is that I think the game was already over 5 years ago, but now you can just see it unfolding because it's so difficult to change. And if you don't be very vocal about your mistakes you're doing, and if you're not like Jim Farley, I think, does a great job to at least speak about this, because what else can he do? He can talk to his workers, to talk to his teams, to see how they're gonna shift, because I think Ford has a chance. I hope it has a chance. I mean, I'm pretty my prediction isn't as bright for Legacy, actually, and also for VW, for example, and everything. But still, I think that Ford is also a very American company. I mean, the Ford Model T was a huge hit, and they, like, globally, Ford did a great job to get this running. And so I think if Jim Farley steps forward and says, look, we're not performing good in the EV space, and this says something to the people that work there, they will say, then maybe some of them will at least say, all right, let's try to tackle this problem really and just get in. But then again, Tesla has the best talent from the EV space already. They have the best aerospace engineers at SpaceX. They swap workers between the companies, and
throw Twitter into the mix now.
Yeah, exactly. Also with Twitter crazy, now, and it's crazy. And also Twitter being a training ground for the language model. I can really see that somehow that they're going to implement the AI capabilities of Tesla and deepen them with language models. Then you can talk to your car. It remembers what you said last time and everything. And things like this is actually luxury. And then we have a manufacturer like Mercedes, who has great panels and everything looks pretty stylish, but the car is dumb as hell. So
Yeah.
that's it's I mean they have the Silicon Valley software company approach, and this is a total different game. They come from software development. You can really feel that, and they revolutionized with this mindset also the manufacturing and everything. It's and with automation and everything. It's such a like state of the
Yeah.
art, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think even in that interview, Jim had mentioned a little bit about the fact that obviously they're adopting the charging standard. Because imagine, you're making a company. Like, does it really matter what the plug looks like that plugs into the
No.
car?
Yeah.
Not as much. So I think it's just kind of funny that it took this long for them to kind of finally like wake up. Like they just need to look at the stats, like, right. And I think, Jim Farley even said, right, it's like his son, they were on a summer road trip, I think in Northern California
Yes.
or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
And he's like, Tesla charger, Tesla charger, Tesla charger. And it's like, I can't imagine. He didn't even really talk about his experience as a Ford Lightning owner, and or a Mustang Mach-E, and potentially his experience at Electrify America. Right? It doesn't take very much to get on, to realize. Just leave it to a kid, because they know
Yeah.
how forward looking things can be, because they just get it. But
Mm-hmm.
not only is there 12,000 stalls in North America, but it's just the ease of use. So that's all kind of like they're all opening up to it. It took them a long time to do it, but I'm really happy about that. But the one thing he wasn't really even willing to say is, like, I think I forgot if it was I forgot exactly. It was asked, like, do you consider potentially even doing software? And I think he was kind of like resistant, like, not yet. There's some stuff we have good coming down there. But what's going to happen is that I think, kind of like Apple CarPlay, I think that, the Tesla operating system is going to become potentially a standard, or
Yes.
one of the options outside of the Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, because the difference is that the Tesla software will be helping communicate to the whole vehicle versus just, the screen, right? That's all
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah.
Apple CarPlay really does. It just gives you the maps. It gives you, some texting options and a bunch of, other
Mm-hmm.
apps that you essentially can use in it. But it doesn't talk to the rest of the car. And so
Yeah.
it's going to be one of those things where it may not have like the Ford or the Tesla brand on it per
Yeah.
se, but it's going to be
Yeah.
on the back end, where people, they're going to have to. I think that's to be honest with you, it would be one of those things where I would say, hey, if I was Ford, like, and I'm probably more in your park. I think Ford is, out of all of the legacy auto, is they're the most forward thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Potentially, obviously, I like what I believe it's VW is doing with Polestar. I think that's or Volvo, either one of those. Whatever they're doing with Polestar, I think that's good as well. But I think Ford is the most forward looking. But it's one of those things where they've gone to, like, okay, charging, okay, Tesla, you've won. Like, we'll take
Mm-hmm.
your plug. But it's one of those things where, like, Jim needs to look at, okay, what is the roadmap to potentially even getting something, a simplified version of a Tesla software, or something that's even
Mm-hmm.
okay or
Yeah.
comparable, right?
Yeah.
And he needs to look at that roadmap. How many engineers? What's the investment going to be? And if it's so far out, right, it's just going to take that much time to catch up. Then it's the conversation becomes, hey, Elon, what would this look like? And then maybe he can even have, some type of mind, or you know, some type of idea of what he
Mm-hmm.
thinks. Okay, hey, Elon, we would like, or hey, Tesla, we would like, our software to look like this. You already have this,
Mm-hmm.
capabilities. We would probably take what you have and probably even dumb it down a little bit, potentially, to communicate back to our cards. What would that look like? What would the deal look like?
Yeah.
Those are the conversations that need to be happening now, not
Yeah.
5 years from
Yeah.
now.
Absolutely.
Because what's going to happen is 5 years from now is that Ford and GM are probably going to be coming out, hey, we're adopting, Tesla, Tesla Auto, or whatever Tesla
Yeah.
software,
Exactly. Yeah.
and that's what's going to happen, because the platform that Tesla's creating, if they can solve autonomy, which is one of the greatest problems that this world will see as far as like being solved, right? So the adoption to electrification was like a huge wave, but potentially adoption to autonomy is going to be an even bigger wave. But Tesla is already going to have the platform to essentially allow that whole, like that full stack communication of ride sharing to communicating to your car and everything. Like there's just no way, like unless Uber, and Lyft are, and I know that they've done some self-driving cars, but unless they're building a platform in conjunction with Legacy Auto, or they allow another company, a good innovation company, to come in and build that software for them, there's just no way that they're going to keep up, right? And they probably don't want to outsource another thing, so they probably won't go that route. But it's just one of those things where, the writing's on the wall. It's 2023. It's going to be a matter of time before they probably have to jump on the software, because it's just,
Absolutely.
and if they don't, what's going to happen too, right? And I think, you probably had this discussion with other people, is that as EV owners go and charge their car, they're essentially going to like a mini, Tesla advertisement. Every time they get out of their car and plug it in, it says Tesla, right? That's going to be just, in the back of their mind. And it's going to be one of those things where, unless you're that person, and there are those people where they're like, I don't want the Toyota Corolla. I have to go get the Hyundai, whatever comparison is, or I have to go get the VW because I just don't want a Toyota Corolla because everyone has it. So there will be those people. But then they're going to go through the experience. And, again, the Tesla experience is still very, very, very good. It's a lot better than Electrify America. But it's just going to be one of those things where, even if your car has some more miles, of range, it's just not going to be the ease of use that you will get with a Tesla. And so, sure, they're giving up some of their competitive advantage by opening up the network, but it goes back to what their mission is. Which they're trying to stay true to, which I understand. But it's also one of those things where Tesla will continue to just innovate and make their product that much better. And so, that's what that rigor and that ruthlessness in how much they're innovating will always keep them ahead, right? And I think they've even said their biggest competitive advantage is manufacturing, right? And obviously it's software as well too. But so I could go down a bunch of rabbit trails here.
I think it's very interesting because I think software and manufacturing that's their competitive advantage. I think it's, like you said, also indicated both, of course, because they are a smart company that does smartify all their processes and make them the software integrate into their ecosystem. And I mean, for example, they have this self-management software thing going on at the factories, that if a part is, for example, a delivery delay is going to be in the next 5 hours, the system already knows it's going to change the line to adjust to this new information they have, and it's all automatic, for example, and stuff like this. This also ties into now the refining, because refining is such a huge bottleneck for battery production, and to reach 20 million cars a year, you really have to tackle this problem. They already did a great job securing all these contracts. I mean, they have money in the war chest like crazy, and almost no car manufacturer has or at least I assume no car company actually has this much money in the war chest. And they're gonna go there and say, look, we're gonna secure your business for the next 10 years now, when you ramp up the lithium refining, or lithium mining at first, and then the refineries is the key piece here. And I think the refinery they're gonna do is like a benchmark refinery, like a model refinery that different refineries can adapt, because Tesla's strategy is educating also the supply chain, helping them to get. I mean, this is so crazy. This open source thought of them, that they're gonna share everything with their suppliers and everything, is also such a competitive advantage, because they're gonna also make refinery smarter in the processes inside of the factory, and this is gonna be a benchmark for the rest of the industry, I think. And of course, they don't want to vertical integrate everything. if it's not necessary, but if it's necessary, they have to, and that's why they're going to do it. I mean, that's such a crazy strategy that really unfolds now.
Yeah, it's, a couple of thoughts. Elon Musk has said that patents are stupid.
Exactly.
The other thing he has talked about is, he never wanted to do lithium refinery. And I think he even said on earnings calls, hey, if there's
Please do it.
somebody out there, go and do lithium refinery.
It's gonna,
But
and he said it's gonna make you a lot of money as well for the next
exactly.
20
And
years.
so, a couple things on the, I believe it's Corpus Christi. They launched that lithium refinery. So first off, America doesn't do a lithium refinery at all really anymore. And so their factory in Corpus Christi will, once it's fully ramped, will be doing more production on lithium refinery than all of North America combined, just because it's just kind of a dead field in some ways.
Yeah.
But going back to what you're saying is that, or partially going back to what you're saying, but also, the quote that I said is like, what type of person is innovating so much that they don't have time to go say, you know what, I'm going to go get this in writing, like this statement or this idea in writing, so that, my competitors can't use it. Right.
Yeah.
And get all this legal jargon written up. The problem is Tesla is innovating at such a fast clip. Even SpaceX and, Twitter is there innovating too. At
True.
such a fast clip, where a lot of times when they're doing patents, it's mainly just to kind of protect themselves. But really there's just no time for that. Right. It's just one of those things where Elon doesn't want to waste his time worrying about making sure, like this company is not copying me, this company is not, because the problem is that they're going to always be innovating so much. They're going to be using engineering and physics to reinvent the wheel. Because even when they have something figured out, they potentially could take that whole thing, throw it out the window in 2 years and reinvent it again. And as you said, as the same thing with refinery. I'm not a refinery expert, but you've shared some good tidbits on the fact that they are going to they're probably not even going to look at, what is being done today. They're probably going to be, some of them are going to be experts in that. And I wouldn't be surprised if the engineers that are stepping into this lithium refinery business had no idea about anything on lithium refinery before. But what they do have is these goggles that they can just put on. And it's kind of like my joke, I'm in the finance world. It doesn't matter what the data is. Numbers are numbers. It's just a matter of like how you talk about it, what the story, the insights that you gain from it. So engineering can be potentially the same thing, where it's like you essentially can it doesn't matter what field you're looking at. You can go in, you have the bread and butter of what engineering is, and being able to just go in and reinvent it. Like you essentially take the foundation, pull it up, strip it out, and then you say, okay, what are some of the good things, or what are the things that we're going to do? And so the Tesla way is that, like, they are not going to take what other people have done and just use like, oh, that was good. It's just one of those things that they're going to do what makes sense. And so I'm not surprised by some of the comments you made on lithium refinery, but yeah, their goal is to build the standard, and then potentially like reinvent that and allow others to potentially utilize that. Right. And so, yeah, it'll be really interesting. Again, they're stepping into a lot of industries, obviously, that they didn't want to be doing, like mining and lithium refinery, but they don't have a choice because there's other bottlenecks. Right. It's like having to always rely on that person that, obviously it's good to rely on people, but not if you're just innovating and running at a clip where most people can't keep up with. And you saw that with Apple. At some point, they totally vertically integrated. They no longer used, the Intel processors or, other companies. They pulled everything in house and they build their own, every piece of the iPhone, I believe. Again, keep me honest there, but I know that they are vertically integrated. And that's what's going to keep these companies, specifically Tesla, just way ahead of it. They just they don't care about patents. Just like they're going to continue to keep innovating, right?
Yeah, and it also makes so much sense for their mission, of course, to share this information. I mean, I think it was 2015 where they opened up all the patents and said, please use it. And nothing happened until now. That they, I mean, this is crazy. It's 8 years ago almost, and or pretty
Yeah.
much, and now with the NACS, North
Yep.
American Charting Standard,
Yep.
okay, yeah,
NACS. Yep. I had to do that too.
opening up. Yeah, is I always mix up some letters, but yeah, I think opening that up is pretty good, and I think it's not. I think Tesla will give them a good deal, I think, because it's not about crushing them or squeezing every dollar out of the competition until they die, and then that's not the mission that they have. I think I mean, competition is healthy, competition is important also to for the market, and also I'm not a fan of monopolies, so besides I like Tesla pretty much, and I think they're crushing it and doing a great job. I still think they need they need a competitor, and right now it almost looks like it's just more like BYD is in the best position of being that somehow, or some of the Chinese manufacturers, but also there the margins are not there in the ballpark of Tesla. You have to keep that also in mind, and but I think like the Chinese government is pushing so hard on EVs that I think they're gonna have enough support to sustain this business model and to get it out there. And they have battery production in the country, which is like the most important thing. And now, if you compare to German OEMs, where what do we have here in Germany actually from an EV standpoint? Or a smartphone standpoint, for example. No, we don't have batteries. We don't have anything like this. All the R&D, all the research and development is in the internal combustion engine, and they try to keep it up and running as long as they could. We had diesel. Oh, we have a clean diesel and everything. They lied and decepted like crazy, just like a screaming kid in a store that wanted to have something and is just punching and screaming that it doesn't work anymore or something. And that's pretty sad, because they have to rely on third-party manufacturers. They have to buy the batteries from third-party suppliers from China, especially. And yeah, now they have talks with, for example, also with Huawei to develop software for the car and everything. So they're in talks, and they rely on this, and that alone is yeah, they should seek out partnerships also with Tesla, I think, in the first place, because they're ahead of their time, and they should have. I mean, Herbert Diess really started this, but now Blume cut the ties totally. Then that's pretty dumb, because they are the industry leader right now, and I think German OEMs are too proud right now, sadly. So that's just like I just wanted to give the German angle here for 1 second.
Yeah, and I don't know if obviously I don't want to take this conversation in a different direction, but what is the quick European perspective specifically? So obviously Germany has Giga Berlin now, but what is the perspective? Because I think you made a comment of like Europe doesn't really have like the smartphone or the next car, and so is that kind of also too kind of what a lot of these countries like Spain and Italy and France, they're all kind of feeling, as far as like, hey, we want Tesla to come here to kind of give us that innovation, because it's just not here right now? Or is that just kind of a misnomer?
I have to give them, all the countries in Europe, I have to give them credit as well, because the Giga presses, for example, are from Hydra, which is a Italian company, for example. So this means they have innovation here, of course. For example, in Germany, we have many small and medium enterprises which are like actually world leader in their specific niche. So this means we have hundreds of those. For example, Tesla wouldn't have been capable of producing the 4680 batteries if they didn't buy Grohmann Automation, for example, which is also a German company. And we have many of those small German companies that are actually number one in the world. And we have many of those splattered in small villages. Even it's crazy. And like there is a huge industry, and German engineers, Italian engineers, French engineers, and also Spanish engineers are doing a great job in certain fields. But I think from the standpoint of like the scale that Tesla tries to tackle is so unprecedented that who wants to open up factories in Europe? All they want is to go to Eastern Europe because it's cheaper there and
Yeah.
everything. And if now a gigafactory comes here, and it's like in the business model, it makes sense to do this in Europe or in Germany even, which is I thought was, wait a second, you want to open up a gigafactory in Germany? Are you crazy? Not even German OEMs do that. They have, of course, VW has the Wolfsburg plant, and Mercedes is here as well, but the mass production isn't in Germany actually, and this was so interesting for me. But I
didn't
think
know
it's
that.
about
Yeah.
it's because of the size. I think it's also because of this, and they have the money, they can invest in the region, and I think that's why they are
Okay.
open for discussion. I think, yeah, that's my take I have on this topic. Yeah.
Yeah, no, makes sense because it's just yeah, it's because a lot of the countries that you've been hearing most about is probably the second gigafactory opening up in Europe. But I think it's going to be, the announcement's going to be a couple. It's not going to just be
Yeah.
one, right? We know
Yeah.
that it's going to be potentially Giga India,
Yeah.
Giga Italy, or Spain. And then one last question: what
Yeah.
country do you think it would be most set up for success based on the countries I think we've heard? I think it's Spain, Italy, and
Yeah.
France. Which one do you think would be
France.
the best?
I think hard to tell for me. I think Spain, because they already have car production there as well. I mean, of course, France has this also, in Italy, of course, but I think Spain could be an interesting thing, but that's just intuition. I'm not
Yeah.
like, it's not fact driven. It's just an
Yep.
intuition. Like, Spain could be very
Okay.
good because I think the Spanish government, the problem with France is they are too close to leading Europe. That's why they are pretty authoritarian. No, that's the wrong words to say, but they are strict, pretty strict, like
Yes.
Germany. It's like France and Germany really drive a lot of the laws in Europe, and they are the strongest partners here, and that's why I think, like, Spain is you could say more desperate to get manufacturing there because they have a high unemployment rate and everything, and I think they're gonna get better deals from Spain. That's why I think Spain is a good option. Um, yeah, Italy is yeah, I'm not sure. Italy has still some problems with corruption in some instances, so I think Spain is a good bet, but France is, yeah, also good. I mean, yeah, you could just choose. I'm not sure, but I think Spain is a good
Okay.
option. I think, yeah,
Yeah. No,
that's
it's
my
good
intuition.
to hear
Yeah,
potentially kind
yeah,
of the European perspective
you,
a little bit
yeah,
on that.
yeah. Yeah, but maybe we can talk now about media covering now Tesla, because I think in the US it's pretty evident what's happening. Also in German media, it's crazy how Elon Musk as a person is attacked so much. That's why Tesla is also attacked all the time. Uh, and yeah, you don't really know. I mean, we have a strong car industry here as well, who don't like this competitor, I think, because it's taking up so much market share now. And of course, and yeah, what's your view on the like FUD going around? Because, for example, we had a comparison in the finance media, for example, in CSNBC. It was there was a thing that Jeff posted. I thought that was pretty funny. Just maybe we can start with this. There was that Nvidia, their PE ratio was very high, but they didn't talk about this because Nvidia rocketed away. You know that it was over.
Yeah.
I think the PE ratio was over 90, and then just kept on going. And then they talked about Tesla. Oh, the PE ratio is way too high, and everything, and stuff like this. It's so
Yeah.
skewed. So interesting to see, but they don't really realize that they are a software company as well, or an AI company now, and
Yeah.
it's getting more and more evident. But yeah, please,
Yeah.
go on. Sorry.
Shout out to people like Gary Black. I think Gary Black, he's
Yeah,
he's an analyst as well. He manages a fund. I think, even Ross Gerber, but Gary, he's even told us, like, he can't give out certain stock targets on Tesla. Like, let's say, if it's at 270 right now. If he were to say the
Yeah.
stock's worth $10,000, he said he would like lose credibility. Obviously, ARK Investment has been on the other edge where they're like, we don't care, this is what the stock's worth. But I think it's just one of those things where the average day analyst does not understand, the average Wall Street analyst does not understand Tesla, because
Mhm.
all they have is like, this little calculator that they stick some numbers into. Okay, here's the amount of cars, here's the average,
Yeah.
revenue per car, here's
Just from the
potentially.
car lens, yeah, they could just go.
Yeah, they don't
Yeah.
factor in the battery and solar business, which is not even there. I believe I'm probably going to butcher this, but they just announced a huge deal, $390 million deal for megapacks. I believe it was with like Western Australia that happened.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think shout out to Sawyer for calling out. I think that's like 8,500 Model Ys is the equivalent or something like that. But there's just a lot of things that people don't realize that this company is. So you have the battery and energy business. You have the fact that they're a robotics company. They're making the machine that makes the machine, right? So,
Yeah.
and that's how they run their factories. It's, it's a product in itself. Like
Yeah,
you and I
it's
think of like the
the
Model
yeah.
Y, Model 3 as a product. Go ahead.
No, yeah, exactly. The factory is they're a factory manufacturer, actually.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly, right? And so it's just one of those things where so they have the battery and energy business. They're a robotics company. They're also an autonomy company. They're solving the full self-driving. I was one of the first testers, if not the first tester, and the insane amount of improvement that it's had
Mhm.
in 2.5 years and almost 3 years in October is just mind-blowing. And so and there's a bunch of the fact that they're an AI company. I mean, you think of like some of the things that these companies are going to be able to do. Like imagine, obviously like Chat GBT, but Tesla has a real-time AI company, right? Like they
Mhm.
are making
Yeah.
real-time decisions. And that is going to be like, what does Chat GBT say to you? They say, hey, we are not a real-time based, company,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So they
Yeah.
can't give you like historicals and some or like real-time information.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Tesla is that. So it's just one of those things where, Tesla is making cars that are making real-time decisions based on like what it sees with its eyes slash cameras. And then same thing with these robots are doing the same thing, but they're applying it to something different, walking around a factory, putting two
Yeah.
pieces together, going and just doing the same repetitive and redundant things, but also potentially even learning and
Yeah.
reacting. Like when it sees like an egg, does it step on it or does it go
Mhm.
around it? Like, or when it sees a banana peel, like just and that's real-time information. So it's just one of those things where they again, their biggest issue is going to be making sure that they prioritize, not
Yeah.
ideas. This company
Mhm.
has way too many ideas that Elon just
Mhm.
can't even like go off about, right?
Mhm.
So it's just because they can do all these things, like based on the stuff I said alone, they could make all of these products. But the problem is that the right thing for them to do? And them focusing and prioritizing on those things, that's what matters. But the media and the analysts just don't understand. And if
Mhm.
they did, like none of them understood what Amazon was when it was
Yeah.
like an online bookstore. I remember receiving
Bigger
a
than
couple.
Sears? What? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Or SpaceX being, bigger than Boeing, right? Here's this small company, or the Apple beating Nokia, or
Mhm.
even
Huge
the
thing. Yeah.
BlackBerry. It's just one of those things where if you listen to what the model says every day, you will not see this company. And
Mhm.
even when the stock was falling, it's just like, sure, the PE ratio doesn't make sense to other comparables. Well, first
Yeah.
off, there really are no comparables, first off. And then secondly, again, there has to be a factor that you have to factor in that cannot necessarily be, um, what's the word? Like tangible. There's just a
Mhm.
certain aspect of it. Like, can you actually size up the AR market? Can you actually size up the autonomy market? And sure, there's certain things you can do, But when you know that this company is prioritizing certain things, like they're like Elon has said in multiple interviews, even recently, it's like our valuation is going to be, whether we're like a hit or like a miss or a home run is whether we solve autonomy. Like that's the next
Yeah.
biggest thing that they're
Yeah.
focused on. So you have to be able to factor
Totally.
that in. But then you also have these sleeping giants like storage, batteries, and
Yeah.
energy.
Energy is
And
huge thing,
yeah,
because it's actually a bigger market and business than the car business on the whole. Even if they reach their scale, energy is a bigger sector still,
mhm.
and they are building
Because
this out in parallel right now. This is people don't wrap their head around it. Tesla is like a
exactly.
huge ETF. It's just a huge ETF.
Because not everyone owns a car or will own a
Hmm.
car, but
Hmm.
the majority of people, obviously, I know there's people that can live without electricity, and they do, but the majority of people, the majority of countries need some type of form of energy that is renewable. That they can't just because just imagine you go out to some of these remote areas. The one thing that the country will have is they have sun, right? And that's just
Yeah.
something that will happen, comes up every day. And then all you need to do once you put up some type of energy storage, you just stick a Starlink to it, and you have access to the internet
Yeah.
and knowledge, and it bridges the gap, right? So again, I know this interview is not about, or this podcast is not about, SpaceX and all that other stuff, but it's just one of those things
Yeah,
where,
but it
go ahead.
ties. I mean, it ties everything together because a
Mhm.
Starlink could be on the Tesla van, of course, and
Exactly.
it could the solar thing could be on the car as well,
Yeah,
or
or
anything,
the
or
yeah,
the storage, and it ties.
the
It's
internet.
part of the ecosystem. Yeah, actually,
Yeah,
yeah.
and the internet from Starlink, from the satellites, will obviously at some point go to your Tesla. So they'll no
Yeah.
longer, I believe in the US they use Verizon as the network, or AT&T,
Hmm.
either one of those. At
Hmm.
some point they'll get rid of them, and then they'll
Yeah.
just be beaming down the
Yeah. It's
the information.
so
But
crazy.
yeah, so it's just one of those things, I'm actually really interested in what will the next 6 months look like, because it's
Hmm.
just one of those things where Tesla has obviously, as we know, by the current administration in America, and and really the mainstream media, it's been one of the most overlooked companies.
Hmm.
And there's
So
been
yeah.
presidents that have cared more about Tesla than obviously the current one. And even the current one, he's making strides, don't get me wrong, but
Hmm.
it's been very clear Elon has voiced his frustration with the current administration because they've been overlooked. But what I'm really interested in is, now you're having, like, Tesla is like the standard now in North America, from a charging standard, from a supercharger standard, from potentially what the next vehicle will look like. And so it's more of like, are they going to continue to just hate on this company? And I believe that's probably what they're going to do. When
Hmm.
someone dies, they don't say Ford driver died. No, they
Hmm.
say,
Yeah.
oh, like, driver hits tree. But if it's a
Hmm.
Tesla, it says Tesla hits tree.
Hmm. Yeah. That's
Or like, and then they always, the clickbait is like, within the first 3 sentences, they have not validated whether autopilot was on or engaged or not. And it's like, because that's really what it is. And I believe it was on the latest interview that he did. I believe it was in France, but it could
mhm.
have been Zuby. He's done like 15 interviews in
Yeah,
the past
yeah, I
two,
know.
3 weeks.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
he said that the goal of the mainstream media is click maximization, right?
Yeah,
They are looking for the amount of clicks, whereas
of course,
Twitter
yeah.
is solving for truth maximization, right? And so
Mhm,
it's just one of those things where it's completely reversed. So everyone, when they think of Elon Musk, there's just trigger words that will get clicks, right?
mhm,
Tesla fires,
yeah,
or Elon Musk, tweeted this, tweeted
mhm,
like we should go private, or
mhm,
there's just certain trigger words that you can put Elon Musk in a caption, and it's going to get clicks because his
yeah,
name at this point is a brand. It comes with something. And it's unlike actually something we've ever seen, right? Growing
mhm,
up, I knew who the richest person was at the time. It was Bill Gates, right? And it was
mhm,
because of Microsoft, but it
yeah,
wasn't, no one is doing as much as Elon is and having
yeah,
such an impact, right? And don't
yeah,
get me wrong, you could argue Bill Gates is a huge reason why we have computers, why we have Microsoft Office, that changed, had a huge impact on the world, but no one is having an impact in multiple facets like Elon is, right? And
Yeah, that's true.
even Bezos, right? He's obviously done a lot with Amazon, and Amazon has really changed, the whole supply chain and delivery aspect of, items. But he's also, he's doing Blue Origin, don't get me wrong, but he's also just on a yacht. Like, it's very clear,
Yeah.
it's just it's different. Whereas Elon's early 50s, 53, whatever the number is. And do you see this guy slowing down? No, what did
No.
he do? He's like, and this is a quote of his. It's like, well, if I'm so smart, why did I buy Twitter? He was like, no, 2008 pains, 2018 pains of like the Tesla, manufacturing hell wasn't bad enough. Let me just go buy Twitter.
Yeah.
And so, that's the thing is that, Tesla, this company, there's just a certain factor that analysts will never be able to get. So if you keep your analyst hat on for, if you're trying to make a valuation and whether this valuation makes sense, you won't be able to get there. Right. I mean,
Yeah.
Elon, even saying now, I think they're at 800 or 900 billion, right, market cap. They're like, this company could be, Apple plus Aramco combined, which is, I don't even know the number, 7-8 trillion, whatever the number is, 6 trillion, whatever the number is today. But that means that they could go 10x from here.
Yeah.
Which is insane. So it's one of those things where, and it's just one of those things where, the mainstream media, I believe, will continue to, throw hate against this, especially depending on what the media is being fueled by, right? In the past, it used to be fueled, especially in America, it was fueled by, these big oil companies, dealership companies, and legacy auto, right? Like, when I was interviewing Elon literally a year and a month ago, it's crazy. It's already been a year. He was saying, how, imagine you're GM and you're spending, I'm making this up, $100 million with New York Times a year. And they go and say GM is a failure company,
Yeah, they're
and
gonna pull out their ads. Yeah.
their Chevy Volt, exactly, their Chevy Volt is getting on fires. You know what the guy's gonna do? He's gonna get up on the phone and he's gonna call the marketing lead at New York Times.
Yeah.
And what is he gonna say? He's gonna say, "Pull my ads. I'm pulling all of it." Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Elon again used that, and what happened instead was the exact opposite for Tesla. Tesla being labeled a fraud, being labeled, that they are going to go bankrupt, that they have fires. What did that do? That actually helped with sales, right? It helped with marketing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So it's just one of those, it's just one of those things where a lot of this fake news actually fuels more and more headlines that will be good. And I think, I'm not going to mention the politician, but there's certain politicians, especially in America, that understand that. They're like, I'm going to say this ridiculous thing, and this is going to get me headlines across America, and he's going to be all that he or she is going to be all that the mainstream media is going to be talking about. And I'm not saying Elon gets that, and I'm not actually even referring to Elon, but Elon understands the mainstream media because he has faced the ruthless attacks from them over and over again. And again, we're not talking 10 years ago. We're talking even last year, earlier this year, with a lot of the fake allegations that were people saying a friend of a friend's like massage friend or something is just like saying a bunch of stuff. It's just, and then, in 2021, he was seen as like the person of the year or whatever year it was. And so it's such a polarizing thing. And I think that's where, Elon understands that. And so he plays into it a little bit because he gets it. He knows how to he knows the right chords to string to just blow things up, or he knows the right tweets to say.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things where, Tesla is changing so many industries and it's scaring a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's
I think
why,
so too.
I mean, that's why, for the longest time, the mainstream media, which was again fueled by these big advertisers from oil companies and car companies, and that's what they were ultimately trying to go after.
Yeah,
That's
totally
why they were
makes sense.
attacking Tesla.
Yeah, and if you imagine how much money oil companies pull out of the floor actually in an hour, you can really imagine how much money they have in the war chest to drive this kind of FUD actually. So this isn't a surprise for me. I mean, Shell, for example, it's horrible things in Nigeria and everything. So like they don't have a soul in that sense, that or BP, for example, that had this huge environmental disaster and stuff like this. So there are so many things that they are willing to do to keep the ball rolling. And of course, it's important. Energy is an important topic, and I don't want to hate on energy. I don't want to hate on oil because it's a important technology to, because our costs are down, living standard is somewhat up. That's all because of energy as well. And if energy costs are high, then we all suffer actually. So this is a big deal. But I think the amount of money they have in the or had in the war chest, or still have in the war chest, to go against this kind of like threat from Tesla, because they say, hey, we're going to revolutionize your industry and you're going to go out of business in the next 50 years. That's not a good
Yep.
sign for them. So of
Yeah.
course he stepped into a hornet's nest. And but now I think they're too big to fail. They are expanding to different countries. So that this also means if the US makes them problems, they just can say more or less, hey, we're not as dependent on you as we were in the beginning, but still, of course, all their stuff is in the US. But what I mean is that I think that's also an advantage now. They're too big to fail right now. I think they became this big company now. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
capable of being. Yeah.
I mean, there's still a lot of things that I like. For example, if Tesla does not solve autonomy, like, and let's just be real. If it comes to a
Mm,
point where it's like this company will not solve it,
yeah.
I think the biggest issue is just time right now. I think
Yeah.
that's going to be their biggest issue.
Hmm.
It's not a matter of will they will. It's just a matter of time. And I think it's even at the shareholder meeting. Actually, shout out to my friend Joe. He stood up and said, "Elon, don't give us an estimate on when you think autonomy will be here. Like, don't do it."
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just because it's just like in his mind, he can oversimplify things.
Hmm.
And he just gives out sometimes these really quick timelines, but at
Yeah.
the end of the day, he ultimately he delivers. So I think that there's sure that this company, like if you factored in, let's say you took out the solar business and energy business, and you factored out even the autonomy business, this company still would probably be the most valuable car company.
Yeah.
But to be what it is today, there's definitely stuff and risks, because there's a lot that they have to execute on. And also
Hmm.
too, they're still seen as a growth company.
Yeah.
So, last year they did what, 1.3 million vehicles. If they only hit like
Hmm.
1.8, or if they, for some reason, the recession gets even worse and they do 1.5, like
Hmm.
people are going to hit the stock with that and say, oh, it's not a growth company. But what
Hmm.
did Elon say? In the next 12 months, he said this at the shareholder meeting. In the next 12 months, we are going to receive tons of headwinds. The
Hmm.
difference is that we have over 20 billion in cash, and
Yeah.
we're going to be able to weather this storm. It's going to be ugly, but no other company is going to be positioned
Yeah.
to come out of this recession and fire on all engines.
Hmm.
And no one is going to be able to step on the pedal as fast as we are, because they're going to continue to innovate, and things aren't going to slow down or stop there, right?
Yeah.
Um, so
Absolutely.
yeah, it's just it's this company triggers a lot of companies, because it's innovating and it's taking their share of the market.
Yeah.
Um, and if it's not right now, it may at some point.
Yeah.
And so, it scares a lot of people. So that's why, you will have a lot of these companies, they'll try
Hmm.
to use, you know, um, a lot of their connections, like mainstream media and other things
Hmm.
like that, lawyers and other things like that, to put this company and shut them up as much as possible. But
Hmm.
when you're innovating at such a fast clip, like it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
Like lawyers just slow things down, right? And I think,
Hmm.
I don't agree with everything that Elon says, but he
Yeah.
said things like, there's too many MBAs and finance people in a room sometimes, and it's just like
Hmm.
it's one of those things where, obviously, clearly, the crazy thing is he feels like he can do their job, but
Hmm.
he realizes that slows down innovation.
Mhm.
And so if he went every time he went and he was trying to make a decision and he talked to his lawyers first or some of these other people first,
Mhm.
like they would not be innovating. And I'm pretty sure, like, again, this is just the thing that came to mind,
Yeah, yeah.
like with the Twitter files.
Yeah.
Like when he was about to release all that, and again, we don't have to get political here, but when, you know,
Mhm.
I believe that was in, was it the Zuby interview? But it was one of the interviews recently
Mhm.
where
Okay.
he said like, the interviewer was like, "Hey, like, did you talk to your lawyers before, you released all the Twitter files? Because obviously this could create a lot of lawsuits and a lot of
Mhm.
things
Mhm.
that Twitter is going to be held responsible for." And he's like, "Yeah, of course I did." But he's like, "I did what was right." And so I
Mhm.
think it's for him, even if he knows it's going to be a risk and it's going to put the company at a bad situation,
Mhm.
he embraces it versus being scared of it.
Yeah,
So
that's
being in
true.
one of those situations where it's like you're kind of just,
Mhm.
you're too scared to step on, places where it's extra hot. He actually is like, "You know what? No, I'm going. And I'm going to take
Yeah.
my sandals off and I'm going to put my feet right on it.
Yeah.
And I might even burn a little bit, metaphorically speaking, but
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
it's just he embraces the unknown. He embraces being
Yeah.
uncomfortable. He embraces going through really insane, crazy periods. I mean, again,
Mhm.
this is a guy that could just be chilling on a yacht, but instead, what did
Yeah.
he go do? He went and finalized the
Mm.
deal on Twitter and spent 6 months of excruciating pain, trying to get this boat on the right path.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty flowing right now in every
Yeah.
direction, I think, and, yeah, I think, Tesla is now in good position, and I think also for also this episode, I think it's pretty interesting what you've said for the end, also for the episode, because I think, that's the main thing. Like Elon is controversial, we can agree on that, but he gets things done at least, and he
Yes.
moves forward. He doesn't dwell on the past too much. He just goes forward, takes the next step. Of course, he's controversial in many ways. You don't have to agree with everything he says, but I think it's so important because he drives technology so further. And if it wasn't for Tesla, then EVs weren't here right now. That's
Yep.
absolutely my thesis here, and I think it would be taken would have taken like until 2040 or something that anything comes out of this. So
And
yeah,
and that's the
yeah,
fundamental good of
yeah,
Tesla,
yeah,
is how
yeah,
fast they accelerate. That's the
yeah,
fundamental good of Tesla. That's always
yeah.
what
They want
Elon
to,
says.
yeah, they want to accelerate the pace of innovation as fast as they can, so
Exactly.
humanity can drive forward, and also like making deals with all those countries is very important. What you want to do, you want to start wars with everybody. That's not how it works. You have to, like, China is a crucial factor for us going to space as well. So if we
Yep.
look at from the lens of the whole planet, you have to arrange somehow, and it's
Yep.
like what can you do? Invade China because they're like they have a different system, and I mean it's that's the main thing. We have to move forward as the whole humanity, actually, to become a spacefaring civilization. Actually,
Yeah.
the outlying goal, pretty far away for Elon Musk, but I think this is one of the key driving factors for him, on the whole. So yeah,
Yep.
yeah, that's pretty awesome, and I also like the community, the Tesla community that and analyzes everything, because it's so interesting to have a view inside of a company like this. We have this Amazon moment of a company, but so many eyeballs watching, analyzing this company. Not like Amazon, which was like more of a black box at first. Just the turbo nerds were inside of this, but not like Tesla. It's like the
Yep.
popularity is pretty different. So, John, on that note, I want to ask you how your preparations for the Tesla takeover is going, because that's like a pretty nice gathering of the Tesla community, actually.
Yeah.
So I wish I could be
Yeah,
there,
I
but
know.
I can't. I wish I would just fly,
Yeah.
but I can't. But maybe next year. I try to plan it for next year or something. If you do something like this, give me a heads up. I'm gonna be
Yeah,
there
well,
then.
we'll be doing it, most likely every year. This
Mhm.
is the 3rd year that we've done it, the 3rd annual year, and so for
Mhm.
those of your audience that don't know what the Tesla Takeover is,
Mhm.
it's a community-run event. Obviously, Tesla Owners of Silicon Valley, we're a nonprofit, but, we're all owners. essentially putting this event on with a couple of other great clubs like Tesla Club SoCal and San Joaquin Valley. But what this event is pretty much, if you want to geek out, or if you're just a Tesla owner or enthusiast or even an Elon fan, you essentially can just come and just hang out. And it's not just like you're going to listen to a bunch of speakers. There's so many aspects to this event. And I'm going to list off like 8 or 9 of them. Obviously, the big one is we have a keynote speaker and a bunch of content sessions, but the keynote speaker is May Musk, Elon's
That's
mom.
awesome. She's awesome.
Is going to be there. She's going to be speaking on this event's July 30th, 29th through the 30th at the Madonna Inn in San Luis Obispo, California. So she's going to be the keynote speaker speaking on Sunday. And it's just going to be awesome to hear about her career, a little bit about not only her career, but what it was like raising her 3 kids who are all changing the game in various ways. And then her perspective of the early days of Tesla, what she remembers, and, a little bit about Elon, obviously. So that's going to be really cool. We're really privileged to have her there. There's actually going to also be like a drag strip racing aspect
I've
to
seen
it.
that. That was so cool.
Yeah, Holly High Voltage is going to be there. They're renting out the Santa Margarita airport runway. And so
nice.
you can come to this event, and Saturday you can essentially, if you have a need for speed, you can go drag race, have acceleration tests, and just do a bunch of stuff. So we're going to have, again, great speakers, content sessions, even meet and greets. So May's going to even have her own meet and greet, potentially if you get in line and you want to talk to her, she's going to have a dedicated time to meet with fans. We're going to have a ride and drive. We're going to have a light show. There's going to be a front puppy photo contest.
Awesome.
So shout out to Earl. Bring your pets, and make sure, you stick them in front of your Tesla and take a picture. And then, the big thing too is Teslas are not known for being able to be modified. People just say, oh, what are you going to stare at all the different colors? No, it's like, we're going to have a super modified Tesla contest, and then a customized Tesla showcase as well. So along with a bunch of other EV companies like Lucid, Rivian, Porsche, all of them are going to be there. There's even going to be Aptera, if you want to see them as well. And then again, over 60 exhibitors and a ton of stuff to do for your kids. So I have a young family.
Nice.
It's important to be able to bring the family. And then the last thing, before your ears fall off, I know it's just this event is literally, it has become so much that it's just insane. The last thing is like, there's going to be a whole section on camping. So, if you want to camp and do all that, you can just geek out. We're going to have Lightship, the first all-electric RV. There's going to be Cyberlander. So if you want to hook up your Cybertruck to this really cool camping experience, space campers, and then just, a bunch of really cool aspects. So go to TeslaTakeover.com and buy your ticket.
Gonna link it here.
Yeah, July 29th through the 30th. But, it's going to be really special this year, especially given, who we have coming to speak, all of the amazing speakers. But this event has just blown up. Like it's, I remember 2 years ago, I just went to the field, and it's like, we're just setting up like these like flags of like where every exhibitor is. And we totally swagged it. Didn't have, all of the requirements that we probably needed to be out there. But it's, so shout out to Kelvin for being our executive director and my vice president of the club. But just, he's the one planning. He's the brain of it. I'm just, here to just get the word out about it. But it's going to be special. So we have a ton of people from Europe coming. So a ton of vendors coming, and like the Austria club is coming. Sexy Buttons from Bulgaria. Yeah. So I could go on all day about this, but I don't want to, the whole thing could be about it. But it's people from all over the world. And that's really what makes the Tesla community special, is that you may not have the same background, but if you have a love for Tesla, it just brings you together. And so if you're free at the end of July, come on out. You too.
I wish I could. I like I said, next year I'm gonna. I try to be there and plan ahead. Then I can make it. But this year was too much. I have a small kid that I wish I could bring also. But now, like you've mentioned, that there are some nice programs for kids as well, and stuff to explore there. So please, everybody, just check it out. I'm going to leave a link down below, or in the I've already pinned it up here. And so, John, thank you very much for being on. I always enjoy the conversation because I love your angle on. You're very informed on what Elon does and on the culture side and what's happening with the fan base of Tesla. Yeah, so thank you very much, John, for being on, and for everybody else, check out Tesla Takeover. And
yeah. Thanks for having me. You provide such a great thought to the community. So I'm always privileged to be on your channel. So thanks again for having me, and I'm looking forward to being back maybe again sometime soon.
Yeah. So, and for everybody else, there's just one last thing to say, and that's goodbye, everybody.
See ya.
Wasn't this episode awesome? Let's accelerate the pace of innovation by subscribing to Tesla Fix. It is my absolute favorite channel on the whole interwebs.